The 7 steps to soul awakening. The first stage is survival consciousness. This is where we question or were born into the world, finding out who we are. The quest for survival starts as soon as a human baby is born. The infant instinctively knows through its DNA programming how to regulate its body's internal functioning, how to suckle, and how to signal to its parents that it has an unmet physiological need. At this stage, the infant is completely dependent on its parents or caregivers to meet its survival and security needs. When we're born, we have no idea how to manage the world around us. It's all extremely foreign, and everything that happens is a learning experience. A key to accomplishing the task of the infant at this stage of development is learning how to survive by attempting to exercise control over its physical and social environment so it can get its needs met. If the infant finds the task challenging or difficult because its parents are not vigilant enough to meet its needs through neglect, abuse, separation, or abandonment, the infant child will form subconscious fear-based beliefs that it's living in a hostile environment and cannot depend on others to meet its survival and security needs. When this child reaches adulthood, it will be subconsciously looking for the security it failed to find as an infant. From the adult self perspective, we can become stuck in this first stage of survival. And as Abraham Maslow states, a human survival needs come above any other need and will stunt a person psychologically and spiritually as long as this need is left unmet. You may have all the money and material wealth in the world, but unless you feel safe and secure enough to be able to spend and enjoy your wealth, it's pretty pointless. If the person has a belief that all of their wealth may be taken away at any point, so they have a fear-based belief or an inner dialogue that says they better hang on to it, they will always live in that survival consciousness stage. If we become stuck at this first stage, we will only seek to survive and not grow. At this first stage, we are at the very start of our journey. And it may feel like we have a long way to go if our sense of self is lacking. The external world puts pressure on us to be better, work harder, earn more, accomplish more, etc., which can all affect how we view ourselves. We may concern ourselves with our body image, our relationship status, how much money we have, what car we drive, how successful we are, etc. And these external pressures subconsciously determine the value we place in ourselves. And we can develop coping methods and negative behaviours such as overdrinking, spending, gambling, partying, even gossiping to soothe our repressed emotions of sadness, helplessness, fear, anxiety, anger, and victimization. If we tell ourselves a story that life is hard or why does this always happen to me, you may feel hard done by outside external factors. You may be convinced that the world is out to get you and there's nothing you can do about it. Often this is when one might seek the help of a coach or a therapist who can bring us out of this state pretty quickly. A coach can help us question our inner values, our purpose in the world, our strengths, and help us initiate new ways of being and new ideas until we experience a light bulb moment. Eventually, the idea that there must be more to life than this becomes your motto. That very idea is your soul taking that first step in our shared spiritual quest towards self-awareness and a soul awakening. This is the time to surrender any blame, regret, or shame. This is the time to move on. But to do this, we must look back on our life so far and figure out how our early imprinting may have caused us to feel how we feel in the world. So let's look at how we become imprinted during our early developmental years of life. The beginning of imprinting. Our imprinting and conditioning starts as early as in the womb, and up until the age of 7, we're said to be in a theta brainwave state that's much like a hypnotic trance. At this stage, we are simply absorbing all of the information we observe. We're like a sponge taking it all in without necessarily making any sense of it. We store this information for reference later, even though we may not realize we're doing so. Have you ever seen a toddler observing their mum and dad talking or arguing? They're silent but alert, and they're watching. Of course, they don't understand all the facts of the discussion or argument, but they absorb and store it all nonetheless. As babies, we use our senses to determine our environment by picking up on the moods of others, their facial expressions and their emotions. The phrase "happy mother, happy baby" does indeed hold some truth. As described by the work of Dr. Bruce Lipton, our environment determines everything. Our DNA is affected by how we interpret our environment, and that means we can either heal or harm our bodies. How we interpret our environment through our senses and belief system determines how we feel. Do we feel safe, loved, valued, and respected? Or do we feel unsafe, fearful, alone, untrusting, and taken for granted? Our early memories imprint themselves into our brains, and our subconscious mind or our deeper mind is responsible for holding most of this information. This part of our brain is like the data bank of our hardwiring. It is the super storage system which never gets full and continues to store our memories. All of our experiences, memories, thoughts, and feelings, and anything that's ever happened to us is stored in this great data bank, the subconscious mind. This storage is the beginning of the imprinting process. Much of how we view the world is determined by how we interpret our environment, and this is set up early on in life by our early stages of imprinting and acceptance. Early stages of acceptance. Between birth and the age of 7, our foundations are being set by those around us. And we will ask our senses, is it safe to be here? Is it safe for me to be me? Can I trust people? Can my parents provide for me? Are my needs being met? Am I important? Can I trust my family? Where do I belong? The list goes on and on. During our first 7 years, we develop our sense of trust and begin developing our sense of identity. But during our next 7 years, we spend our days figuring out how we feel about ourselves in relation to others. From the ages of 7 to 14, we begin to explore how we feel about ourselves in the world. We're coming to recognize if we fit in, if we're acceptable, who accepts me and who doesn't. And it's at this stage that we try and decide who or what we're comfortable with. Other questions we might explore at this age are, what group accepts me? What behavior gets me accepted? What do I have to do to get my needs met now that I'm no longer a younger child? The important thing to see at this stage is marked by the desire to belong to a group, a tribe, a family, or community, to feel a sense of safety and belonging. And it's because of the prior imprints that we either do or do not accept the consequences of our behaviors. Making a choice to grow. Moving on to the ages of 14 to 22, our actions and their consequences begin to affect how we feel about ourselves. What do we believe is possible for us and our futures? And what does our imprinting have to say about it? With all that we've absorbed so far, our imprinting can very well make or break us. We can either project or be authentic, with each option presenting new rewards and new challenges. We need to realize this pattern and grow from it. The second stage. So this is your relationship consciousness. Having learned how to survive, the task at the second stage of development is for the child to learn how to feel safe in its parental, family, and social environment. It learns how to conform and fit in. It also learns how to recognize danger signals and potential threats to its safety. If for any reason, poor parenting or lack of attention, the child grows up feeling unloved, unimportant, not accepted, or that it does not belong, the child may develop subconscious beliefs that it lives in an uncaring, unsupporting world. Our second developmental stage after survival is learning how to form relationships and bonds and adapt in our family, our culture, communities, religions, social groups, and social environments. It's also during this stage that children learn how to recognize new signals of danger and potential threats to their safety. This could be through a harsh judgment, criticism, shame, or humiliation from the child expressing itself, being creative or outgoing, or doing something outside of the family, cultural, religion, or societal norm. Children quickly learn life is more pleasant and thereby less threatening with the support and approval of parents and family, and quickly learn to either conform or rebel. In the most basic sense, the child wants to experience pleasure and avoid pain, which they ultimately learn is easiest to do with parental approval. If the child exhausts all its effort towards pleasing, but fails to get the acceptance and reward from its peers, it will then turn towards rebellion. Adhering to rules, rituals, and traditions contribute to the child's feeling of belonging. It also enhances their sense of safety in our community. If for any reason the child grows up to feel like they do not belong, he or she may develop subconscious beliefs that they're living in a world that does not care for them, leaving them to search for love, safety, and protection elsewhere throughout their adult life. This causes a child to suppress its true feelings, bury its emotions, and seek solace in those they feel do understand it, which can lead to being led astray and into unhealthy situations or relationships. It's here a person seeks to meet the need of belonging in any which way it can. However, if one is raised in a supportive, loving environment where he or she feels safe and protected, they can learn to be open, self-expressive, and comfortable with new people, new situations, and maintain healthy bonding relationships. According to Maslow's hierarchy of needs model, the feelings of belongings are arguably the second most important human need. But what happens when we don't meet our needs? Meeting unmet needs. When you reflect on your life so far, what has caused your deepest emotional wound? What has been the most prominent theme or emotional pattern you've experienced? In the work of spiritual teacher Barbara Muhl, with her work on Script, Kid, and Fantasyland, Barbara discusses the part of us that remains undeveloped due to the unmet needs of the child. She describes the kid part of us creating a script by which we replay our deepest emotional wounds in the relationships we have. Remember, our brains are hardwired by our early experiences, and the brain will always seek to confirm our deepest beliefs. Barbara coined the term Fantasyland, which is the story the kid part of us tells about its escape plan. The fantasy is a script by which we can escape our pain, such as Prince Charming will come along one day, or you'll win the lottery. But in reality, this is just a fantasy and aren't real options. But as long as these scripts and fantasies exist in our brain unchallenged, they will continue to play out, ruining our lives. So thinking back to your childhood, what was your unmet need? Did Dad work long hours preventing you from seeing him? Did that cause you to think you weren't important enough? In cases like these listed above, we might meet our unmet needs by trying to be perfect or by overachieving. This can lead us to volunteer to overwork ourselves in the search for recognition we didn't receive as the child. Take, for example, the late Robin Williams. Before he was a famous actor, he only got his mother's attention when he made a laugh. And as a result, he spent his entire life making other people laugh in a desperate attempt to feel the love, acceptance, and recognition he didn't receive as a child. What we can learn from these kinds of examples is that the only person who can meet your unmet needs is you. So what could it be like if you were to rid yourself of all the childhood beliefs you saddled yourself with? What could happen if you truly loved yourself? If you could go back in time, what would you want to hear from your family that could help you change your path? Take this time now to complete this exercise. Name 5 things you wanted to hear but didn't while you were growing up, and why. And when you've listed 5 things, write down how you can give this to yourself. So the third stage is identity consciousness. By stage 3, you are halfway into your journey towards soul awakening. It may have felt a struggle in the beginning as you pushed through the stages of survival and relationship consciousness. Your lessons may have been hard and tiresome, but now you're here. At this stage, you have to develop your sense of self, create your own identity through your self-confidence and power. Parents are instrumental at this stage of development for providing positive feedback. If you fail to get this feedback, you will grow up with the subconscious belief that you're not important or not good enough. Your sense of self-worth will suffer. Later on in life, you will feel driven to prove yourself. You may seek out groups where your skills and talents are recognized and where you feel accepted. You may even exert your power and authority over others to feel important and powerful. You may overwork and overachieve, constantly seeking praise and validation for your work. But your personal life will suffer as a consequence. It will be more important for you to do rather than be. You may end up being that parent that works so hard that he or she never gets to spend quality time with the family. This belief system was set up or imprinted in you a long time ago. It could be a learned behavior from your parents that this is how life is. You may have heard the messages that you should try harder, even though as a child you simply did your best. The belief that you're not good enough may cause you to become a seeker of perfection or highly competitive, wanting status, power, or authority so you can be acknowledged as someone important or someone to be feared. Looking inside ourselves to find the power that we can use can generate even more power within you in a healthy, productive way. By working through this stage with what I call spiritual alchemy, transmuting negative imprinting into a positive transformation, we can break through our negative imprinting and move forward towards our soul awakening. Through coaching, we can cultivate inner validation and self-recognition for our success and realize that all of the things that felt so important back in stage 1, money, the opinions of others, our body, our material worth, no longer holds such great authority over us. By cultivating a deep sense of self-awareness, you respond to your internal guidance, not the external world. You become secure in the fact that you're capable of meeting your own needs and do not rely on outside sources to complete them. You're starting to become whole and integrated at this stage. But what can prevent this growth? Without positive feedback from our parents or caregivers, we may feel like we failed them, that we're not understood, or worse, that we're unworthy. This idea of unworthiness sinks into our subconscious and ruins our sense of self-worth. If you're not operating from the highest aspect of those energies, you're likely venturing out into the world, hiding who you are, and are projecting a false self or persona out into the world. Consequently, you may not feel safe about who you are, and so you may project an identity that protects you from getting hurt. Such projections take an enormous amount of energy to sustain and are harmful for us in the long run. Eventually, you will hit a crisis point. You may even experience an identity crisis or a burnout as a result of this projection. But what is a burnout, and how do we overcome it? A burnout is any kind of draining experience that has been sustained over a long period. Burnouts ultimately take us away from being ourselves, and they make the tasks of accepting and valuing our authentic selves much more challenging than they already are. Burnouts are harmful, but they can mostly be prevented. It all begins with finding out who you are. Finding your authentic self. What causes the disconnection to our authentic self? And when were we ever truly connected? Look at any young child of 3, 4, 5 years of age. Are they living their authentic lives? Yes, of course they are. Children are encumbered little beings that are living in the moment, unburdened by the trials and tribulations of life. I think about my 3-year-old daughter, who has quite the fascination with the moon. She's always so excited to see it, and every time she does, you can tell she has the same emotional flood of amazement, joy, awe, and thrill, just as if she's experiencing it again for the first time. Most adults, unless they've done the work in themselves that you, as a soul awakening coach, are tasked to do, are still carrying and living out their unmet needs of their inner child. The brain doesn't understand that an old belief we formed as a child was formed from a very limited viewpoint with an immature and limited understanding of the world. Thoughts like, I'm not good enough, I don't fit in, or perhaps even money is hard to come by, keeps us from being our free and true selves because we're burdened with those thoughts instead of focusing on being happy. It's this kind of barrier that hinders our authenticity, vulnerability, emotions, and our creativity, and ultimately leads to burning out. So, healing after burnouts. During the crash of a burnout, we shut off and disconnect and are presented with two choices. We can either project a personality or persona that we feel is acceptable and will get our needs met, or we can choose to heal. Continuing with the example of my daughter, who is so inspired by the little things in life, she doesn't have any worries. She appreciates life's wonders and does not share the external pressures, fears, or anxieties that we as adults feel. If she does come to feel upset, frustrated, or angry because she can't do something, she lets it go in the quick manner that most children usually do. She moves on from the drama of it fairly quickly and regains her authentic balance by being open and receptive to living in the moment. By helping your clients to find creative and imaginative ways to find joy, passion, and creative inspiration from the world around them, you can help them heal much like children do, even after the most significant burnout. All it takes is time, patience, and a few well-executed sessions of soul awakening coaching. So stay true to yourself as a person, and if you're a coach, stay true to your clients. Your greatest reward will be to help someone reconnect with the beautiful authenticity like that of a child. The fourth stage is love consciousness. The task at this stage of development is to find your true self. Discover who you are beyond your parental programming, beyond the peer group pressures that influence your behavior when you're a teenager and beyond. You're done with being dependent, seeking the validation of others to feel good about who you are. You want freedom. You want to be responsible and accountable for every aspect of your life. You want to embrace your own values. You want to find answers to the question, who am I? In stage 4, this powerful journey will change the way you see yourself and the world around you forever. Long gone are the feelings that haunted you in stage 1, where you were stuck in survival consciousness. Hopefully, you'll not have to feel that way again. The 4th stage is the feeling of unconditional love. We are become aware of our own magnificence, and we can see the magnificence and beauty in others. We know, love, and unconditionally accept our true nature. The search for who we are is over, we know. The journey thus far was a long and sometimes tough road. We fought with our inner demons and came out the other side stronger and much better for it. We are that much closer to finally feeling at home. At this stage, we begin to ask ourselves, who am I? Marking the beginning of our exploration towards our true selves. Shortly afterwards, we expand our thinking to explore the new question of why am I here? Thereby marking the transition from the true self to the unique self. We seek to find our role in life by exploring several key questions. One being, what is my meaning? What is my purpose? What drives me and fuels my passion? Most importantly, why has my soul carnated here? For most, finding our calling starts with some sort of discomfort. We're either unhappy with our jobs, career paths and relationships, or some other significant part of our life. Many of these occupations may have started as a way to bring about power, wealth, or status, and have revealed themselves to be less fulfilling than we initially imagined. The resulting uneasiness, or perhaps even boredom, can motivate us to explore our gifts and talents and offer them to the world in a new, more meaningful way. Exploring your gifts and sharing them with the world around you can bring vitality and more creativity into your life. You will become more intuitive and more in tune with the here and now. Being present and wholly indulged in what's happening around you as it's happening is no simple transition. It is, however, a more meaningful approach to life in every aspect you can apply it. Such a transition may introduce insecurity into our lives, especially concerning our finances. Pursuing this new venture may be more fulfilling, but you may question, what about the bills, the rent, or your child's education? How do you know you found the right calling and that it can provide for your most basic needs? For some, finding their calling comes early in life. There are some people who know exactly what they're meant to do in early childhood. But for some, it can happen later on in life. Finding meaning and purpose will happen when we embrace our true self, and in doing so, we take the steps necessary to fulfill the desires of our soul and finding a flourishing pathway to genuinely fulfill our life. How do we develop a false persona on a biological level? As we've learned, how we value ourselves in terms of recognition and validation comes from the various unmet needs of the younger child. As a soul awakening coach, you'll learn that some of us may come to form a false persona that gets projected out into the world. That false persona is also known as our ego or false self, or a subpersonality, as it's projected out into the world as a means to get by or cope and conform. We may hear the internal, younger, negative imprinting voice that we've absorbed from our parents, grandparents, or authority figures that are closest to us, and that voice can either be supportive, nurturing, or negative and critical. We may develop a strong inner critic or judge that we might find hard to shake off at times. It's in this 4th stage of soul awakening we have the opportunity to transmute this inner critic into an inner coach. The transformation is one of a special kind. and it's one that occurs in the heart center. The heart is the gate of transformation. How many people really love themselves for who they are? Ask yourself, if you lost your job tomorrow, would you still love and accept yourself just for who you are? If a relationship ended, would you still feel the same about yourself? What if your children left you, or you lost your home or your material possessions? Honestly speaking, how would you feel about yourself? Most people would not truly love themselves for who they are without their stuff. For many of us, our lovability, likability, and acceptability are almost entirely based on our perception of who we think we are. It's almost as if we have a body double who plays a role for us and is kept alive by scattered bits of external validations. For this reason, we develop false personas to keep us liked and well received. You might receive a compliment today and that makes you feel good about yourself, but tomorrow you may not receive any attention or a compliment at all, and that might begin a cycle of harsh criticism that you really do not deserve. It's up to each one of us to transform our insecurities, fears and doubts and shame by loving every aspect of ourselves. But all the things the ego will do, loving you is not one of them. Your ego is looking for acceptance and it will do anything to get what it needs. You will find yourself arguing with your ego about what is right and wrong. Remind yourself every day that you're worthy of love, compassion, and nurture, and the transformation you're working for every day is yours to be realized. It's in this crucial step that we may reconcile how forgiveness, gratitude, and compassion fit in with the greater plan of our paths towards soul awakening. So the fifth stage, truth consciousness. Having begun to explore the question, who am I, in the fourth stage, you now begin to explore the question, why am I here, and get in touch with your authentic self. Your search for meaning and purpose in your life is what stirs your passion for life, the reason why your soul incarnated as you. For most people, finding their vocation or calling usually begins with a feeling of unease or boredom with their current job or chosen path. Uncovering your unique gifts and talents and making them available to the world will not only bring vitality back into your life, it will also spark your creativity. Nearing the final few stages of your journey, we now find ourselves approaching a greater sense of self-awareness. Our emotional intelligence has deepened and we can appreciate our presence in the world with much deeper insight than ever previously thought possible. Using the perspective we've gained in stage 4, we can now revel and truly live in the light of the here and now. Our new perspective has allowed us to follow and express our truth, and it's here we get in touch with our authentic self. In stage 5 of our journey, we can now speak and apply the fruits of our progress in tangible ways to our own lives, as well as the lives around us. Integrating the truth or authentic stage of our development is all about actualizing your sense of purpose, using your unique gifts and talents along with your creativity to make a difference in the world. As you progress through this stage, you soon realize that the contribution you can make and the impact you can have in the world is significantly enhanced by connecting and cooperating with others who share your values and purpose. People you deeply resonate with who are a part of your soul family. People that operate at the same frequency of vibration. People with whom you can speak your truth and share your wider vision and purpose. So finding your soul family. This requires a high level of maturity. You must be able to recognize your limitations, assume a larger sense of identity, and shift from being independent to being interdependent. It's here you will seek the group where you can use your unique talents, gifts, and creative skills to initiate and sustain change in the world. It's during this stage that you will combine both the connection and contribution aspects of yourself through your authenticity and self-expression. It's here you will seek out like-minded individuals who share your higher vision and want to make a similar contribution to the world. The sixth stage, wisdom consciousness. Perspective blossoms into vision in this step towards soul awakening. We've forgiven our past and revel in the possibilities of our future. It is with wisdom that we learn to deepen our ability and see and tap into our intuition. Meditation or deep contemplation is more securely rooted in the world around us, and connections are no longer just felt, they can be seen. Our inner light is brighter than in the earlier stages, and as our aura becomes more pronounced, it may take on a different color. The individual vibrations within each of us now sync with those in our surroundings in profound ways to open our third eye. The beauty in our lives is far more vivid, and we can now view the problems that plagued us in stage 1 from a higher perspective, not a human one. We can see the beauty in all, and we share this with like-minded visionaries within our soul family. The seventh stage, soul awakening. In this very last stage of our journey, we will achieve soul awakening. What does this mean? All spiritual teachers talk of the same thing, but call it different names, like self-actualization, unity, wholeness, etc., all of which describe the feelings of oneness. By now, the way that you've come to view yourself and the world has shifted, and the grand picture is clearer now than it ever was before. You've developed to a stage that you may never have thought was possible, and so you've experienced several meaningful shifts in your life. In this final stage, validation comes solely from within, so that the focus of improvement goes outward. You've developed your gifts and financial independence well enough that you can share them outward to the world and contribute to the grand scheme. Now, as you've broken away from the harmful effects of societal pressure in stages 1 and 2, your incredible strides in spiritual growth guide you towards helping to reform that society. Selfless service and leaving behind a legacy become the ultimate and arguably the most meaningful parts of your journey. During the last stage of development, you will feel drawn to a life of selfless service, especially if you've become financially independent and no longer depend on the income from your work for your survival. At this stage of development, you want to give back to the world and leave a legacy. You will find yourself being drawn to supportive people in your community, helping to alleviate their suffering, caring for the disadvantaged, building a better society, or helping people with their development. At the same time, you will also become more introspective, looking for ways to deepen your sense of connection to your soul. You will find yourself becoming a keeper of wisdom, an elder, or the person that younger people turn to for guidance and mentoring. In this very last stage of development, you will feel drawn to a life of selfless service. This is especially true for those who've been able to achieve financial independence or stability in their lives and no longer have to work as hard to survive. At this stage, we tend to reflect on our lives and ask, what am I leaving behind? Or what will be my impact on the world? Leaving a legacy, easing the suffering of the world or your community, or even supporting the people you care most about may now become your core focus. As you reflect on your life and your actions, you may seek to deepen your connection with your soul. You may also become more introspective as you continue to reflect on everything you've learned up until this point in your lifelong journey. You'll act as a keeper of wisdom for younger generations as another way to give back and help them down their own path. Developmental shifts often require that we also adjust our minds and attention. In this shift, we broaden our attitudes from wanting to make a simple difference to wanting to make a life of selfless service. This wider perspective will affect our attitudes, our behaviours, and even our values. In this stage, we can access new levels of compassion and serve our loved ones, strangers, and ultimately the world in more profound ways. This will leave us to feel a sense of humility and perhaps even gratitude as we see how our service positively impacts our communities. These developmental shifts also bring about change in our priorities. Modesty and life balance now take precedence over the smaller, less important things of our past. During this stage, your priorities lie within, working on both yourself and others for a bigger, better, grand picture. You become more focused on being than doing, and will learn to let the work of your actions flow through your being. You will finally understand that we're all energetically connected, and that by serving others, you are also serving your higher self. It's in this stage of psychological development that you will find your deepest levels of fulfillment and well-being. And it's also in this stage of development and mastery that you can do the most good for the world around you.